Hello art stars, welcome to another session. So today we're going to be working with landscapes, and for you, or those of you that have been with us for a while, you know that I love a good landscape. Now this one can get a little bit messy, so make sure you cover your work area. I'm wearing my apron today just in case because it's acrylics and they're a bit harder to get out of your clothes. Watercolors, there's no harm, they wash off. But these tend to stick around a little bit more. So we're going to be using a sponge, a brush, and of course our acrylics. And then get some paper or your notebook or whatever you want to work on. As always, I've got a little spare piece of kitchen roll to clean off my brush and a jar of water to cleanse my sponge and my brush. So let's get started. When you're using a sponge, I like to get it a little bit wet before beginning. Not too wet, because then the water's going to get everywhere. But just enough that, oh, and I've got a bit of black acrylic from pouring them over. Just going to wash my hand a little bit. Otherwise, our sponge is going to be full of black. And so I like, when working with a sponge, to work from our lightest color to our darkest color, because it's just going to get dirtier as we go along. Let me wipe that off. Lovely. So you can use a picture as a reference, a place that you've been to. I'm kind of going to see where this goes. I do love a good forest and mountains, so I think that's the direction I'm going to head in. So I'm going to start with a bit of a yellow base. And so you just dip your sponge a little bit on the paint. Don't get too much because acrylics go really far, and you can always dip again. But we want to see the texture that the sponge creates coming through. So that's why you want to work lightly. And I'm going to start with the sun here. And you just dab it on. And then I'm going to lay some here. Maybe there's like a field of flowers or something. So I'm going to do a bit of stippling here. Beautiful. Okay. Might come back in with our yellow later, but I'm going to lay some of our green down. And as I said, this gets a little bit messy, so maybe you want more than one piece of tissue paper around. As you're squeezing the water with your hands, paint might get on it. So just be mindful of keeping your workspace clean and not letting water dribble on your paper by accident. We want it to be on purpose if that kind of thing happens. So again, I'm going to dip in on the green, and I'm going to start creating a mountain here. And you kind of want to use the paint running out in your advantage. So now that it's a little bit thinner, as you can see, it's almost like there's a shadow and a light already in the mountain. And if you'll remember from some of our previous work, shadowing is what brings it to life and gives it that 3D effect. And I'm going to go and add maybe a tad of white here on our green to make a field here. And I want it to mix in with the yellow a little bit, and that's why I said I might come in with the yellow later and retouch some of these areas. And then you can also have a play with dragging it, and it creates a whole other texture. So maybe here there's some forest floor, and I want more of a solid color because I'm going to come in with my stippling and brush later on. And maybe some treetops. On this side. Forest kind of coming off of the side here, or a bunch of trees. I'm gonna get a tiny bit of blue, just a little bit in the corner, and try and come in here and mix it in to kind of create layers of my trees and forest here. And if you feel like you've done too much color, you can always give it a little chance to dry and then come in with some white and bring it back. The beauty of acrylics is we can just keep layering and layering and layering the color on top of each other. And I might do a little bit here on the side of my mountain with the blue. Just on the very edge of it. Beautiful. Now, where do we want to go with this? I reckon we want a lighter blue, so I'm going to grab some white first on my sponge. That might be a bit too much. Like that, and then I'm going to grab a tiny bit of blue on the corner again, and I'm going to come in and try and do my sky. And I'm going to start at the top here and try and get it more white as we're coming down. You can always add a bit more white. Make that really light blue. Ooh. A bit of, you can see this happening, and this might happen to you, where I've dipped in just one corner of paint in the blue, of the sponge in the blue. That corner is kind of coming out a lot darker than the rest of the flat edge of my sponge here. So you can always alternate and add less pressure on that side and even it out. Or use it to your advantage. So now that I know this is a bit darker, I can come in on this corner and use it up a bit. And then grab a bit more white. And bring it down again. Oh, I've gone in and added a bit of black accidentally. If you've got the opportunity to separate your colors more, so here with the size of my sponge, this has gone in the black, and it's kind of, we might be able to turn that into a few birds or something. But I'm just gonna dab it here so it doesn't keep spreading. And I'm just going to rinse off that corner of my sponge so the black doesn't keep interfering with us. There we go. Trying to squeeze the excess of water out. And let's get back to our blue. A bit more of this. You can also try and just hold on pouring the black until you're ready to use it, because it's a very overpowering color, so it can take over. And when your sponge starts getting a bit wet, these little bubbles start forming. And sometimes when they burst and they dry, they create quite a cool texture as well, so it's nice to leave them in. We're going to grab a bit more white. try and do a bit like a cloud here. Kind of coming in over the sun. And maybe we do another cloud over on this side here. And so the reason that it's nice to do this work with acrylics is because of the thickness of the paint. You can control how much texture there is. So I don't know if you can tell there, but the white of the clouds kind of has bigger chunks of paint. And mind you, these will take longer to dry, but then it gives you that sense that you can touch it, you know, that the texture's really coming alive. Beautiful. I think we're gonna leave our sponge there for now and come in with a brush. And now you have two options with a brush. You can use it the same way we're using our sponge, so get a bit of color. I might get some red flowers, kind of some poppies coming through, and just, whoa, that's a bit big. I went in with a bit too much pressure there, and that's fine, we can fix it later. And just using the tip down, create these swathes of flowers coming through. Or you can grab it and using your finger or your thumb, just splat the paint down. And that's why this gets a little bit messy. And I don't know if this is a great brush for this. It's a little bit wet. You ideally want a really stiff brush for this. And this one was pretty stiff when I picked it out, so I thought it was good, but as the paint has gotten on it, it's softened right down, which is lovely when we're painting like so, but not for splashing it down. And so you're using your finger and flicking this way. And I'm sure some of you have done this before. And mine's actually coming out quite delicate, which is great. But let me zoom in so that you can see it. You can just see the teeny tiny flecks of red. And now what I'm going to do is do some tree trunks here in red as well. And I might just get that back to its original, wipe my finger a little bit so I don't accidentally get it where it shouldn't go. And same as we were doing before. Maybe you can see some in the middle here, because sometimes you can see some other trunks through the other trees. You just want to get those nice textures going. I think I'm going to mix in a bit of purple and get that going into my trunks. And when you've just reloaded your brush, go a lot lighter than when it's you've used it up a bit and there's less paint on. What you want is to slowly mix the colors as you're layering them. Lovely. And now that we've got this going, I might come back in with my sponge Let me cleanse that off a bit. And so I tend to just dip it in the water and then squeeze it, get most of the water out, and see, it comes out pretty clean. And go back in with my yellow and do some more swathes of flowers over here. Ooh. Lots of daisies and dandelions coming over this field. And here where I did a bit too much red, we can come in with the yellow and layer some. Lovely. And we can do the same with the red over the yellow here. And sometimes changing your sponge in directions can help it look like it's not just one pattern coming through. Beautiful. And finally, I think I'm gonna come in with a little bit more green on my mountain. Just a tiny bit. Make sure we rinse that off. And what I might do is grab a bit of white with my green. Or a lot of white. See, and start somewhere here in the middle, just to mix those up. And grab a bit more green and make almost like ridges of the mountain so that you get that sense of the little ridges of the mountain coming up. So darker bits and lighter bits. Fantastic. Now you want to let that dry a little bit. This is coming off into the distance here. You can always, I don't really like how that flat texture looks now that it's all lovely and stippled, so I'm gonna come in just a little bit more with my leftover green and fill this area. And now I'm just gonna grab a little bit of blue again, just a little corner again, and just emphasize a bit of that darkness here on the sides. Going up a few of the ridges, grab a little bit more. Okay, and let me see if I can get away with filling some of this white here that's in my forest. If I hold it up to you, let me dry my hand. I want to try and get some of this. Really, I should have filled it before doing my tree trunks. But now that we've got this nice texture coming up the ridges, we've got some flowers floating through the field, clouds, we're going to do that as a final touch. And again, I'm going to come in with some white and green. And just gently touch here. If it gets a bit mixed, we don't mind, because that's kind of the look we've gone for. And I've got some leftover white here, which I might just spread out amongst my flowers. It's lovely. Let me try and push that over there. All kinds of flowers going through our meadows here. All the colours. Okay, and I'm quite happy with how that looks. Now there's just this little corner here of our accidental birds. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my brush and try and really gently connect some of these dots as if they're little birds in flight. Little birds in flight. And there we go. That is our full stippled landscape. Let me know how you guys get on. This one's a really fun one. Like I said, you just have to make sure your workspace is covered so you don't get paint all over the place, and make sure you're squeezing your water inside the jar so that it doesn't go flying and ruining your beautiful work. Good luck, art stars. See you. Bye.